2 months before our wedding, I caught my fiancé in bed with my brother. Now, they want forgiveness. Instead, I gave them something they'll never forget. My fiancé, who slept with my brother just 2 months before our wedding, now they wants forgiveness, but I gave them something they'll never forget. A 30-year-old male, guess I'm here because I need to get this mess off my chest. 3 years ago, my life did a complete 180, and not in some motivational, wow, everything fell into place kind of way. No, I'm talking about betrayal, the kind that rips apart everything you thought you knew. It started slow, like a crack you don't notice until the whole wall collapses. Back then, I was engaged to a woman, Ava, a 27-year-old female. We had been together for 5 years. We had the kind of dynamic that made sense. We both worked hard, played hard when we could, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company, so naturally after 5 years I put a ring on it. Wedding planning was stressful, sure, but things were okay. I was pulling extra hours at work to make sure we could afford the wedding we wanted. Ava, well, she was figuring things out after losing her job. That part was tough on her. She tied a lot of her identity to her career, and being fired hit her hard. I did my best to support her, and after a couple of weeks, she found a pottery class to keep herself busy. Cool, right? I thought so. Now this is where things started to get weird. Ava's pottery hobby should have been a harmless way to de-stress, but then my brother Kyle, a 27-year-old male, entered the picture. Kyle and I, let's just say, were built differently. I'm the straight-laced, career-focused guy. Kyle's the charming screw-up who always managed to land on his feet no matter how badly he messed up. As it turned out, Kyle was also in the same pottery class. What were the odds, right? At first I thought nothing of it. He'd make jokes about how artsy Ava was compared to me, and I laughed along. I mean, it's Kyle, always the joker, rarely serious. But then he started visiting more, a lot more. At first it seemed innocent. He'd swing by after their class and stick around to hang out. Then it became dinner visits where he'd conveniently show up with some random excuse. I was in the area, or I had leftovers I thought you'd like. Okay, fine. Then there was a Friday night when Ava skipped our usual movie date to hang out with Kyle instead. That's when the alarm started ringing in my head. I asked her about it, and she brushed me off. He's like a little brother to me, she said. You're overthinking it. I let it go because I didn't want to seem paranoid, but Kyle's visits didn't stop, they increased. He was at the house more than I was some weeks. When I confronted him about why he was always hanging around, he just laughed. When I'm not allowed to bond with my future sister-in-law, he said. His tone was playful, but something felt off. Fast forward to 2 months before the wedding. I was working insane hours trying to juggle wedding expenses and everything else while Ava and Kyle were basically inseparable. They'd hang out on weekends, go to art galleries, and even hit up new restaurants. It started to feel like Ava was dating Kyle more than me. One night, I came home from work exhausted. I opened the fridge looking for something quick to eat, only to find that the takeout leftovers I'd been saving were gone. Kyle had eaten them again. It's just food, Ava said when I brought it up, laughing like I was the one being ridiculous. That was it. I couldn't keep ignoring the nagging feeling in my gut. I asked Ava point blank if something was going on between her and Kyle. She got defensive. How can you even think that? She said. He's your brother, for God's sake. Her reaction left me feeling guilty for doubting her, but something still didn't sit right. Then came that night. I'd been on a business trip for a few days and came home early to surprise Ava. I picked up her favorite takeout on the way and was looking forward to spending some quality time together. But when I pulled into the driveway, Kyle's car was parked outside. Now, normally this wouldn't have been a big deal. Kyle dropped by unannounced all the time, but it was late, almost 11 p.m., and his car being there at that hour didn't make sense. My gut churned as I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was silent except for faint laughter coming from upstairs. The living room was empty, but the TV was on, its flickering light catching my eye. Scattered across the floor were cups. I set the takeout on the counter, my hands shaking slightly. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking it again, but I couldn't shake the feeling. If he is here, why are they not in the living room? I kid you not, in that moment part of me wanted to turn around and leave, but another part, the part that needed undeniable proof, pushed me forward. I needed to assure myself that there was nothing between them. I walked upstairs, my heart pounding with every step. As I reached the bedroom door, I heard a voice. Kyle's voice. I pushed the door open, and there they were. Ava and Kyle together in my bed. They didn't even notice me standing there. Normally I'm the type to keep my cool, but this was beyond anything I could have prepared for. My fiancée, the woman I was planning to marry in 2 months, was in bed with my own brother. I didn't think, I just acted. Without a word, I stepped into the room, marched up to the bed, grabbed Kyle by the back of his neck, and yanked him away. The look of pure shock on his face was satisfying. He turned to me, and the confusion quickly morphed into straight-up terror. I didn't even glance at Ava. Kyle started stumbling over himself, mumbling some half-baked apologies, but I wasn't hearing it. Without a second thought, my fist connected with his face, and the crunch of his nose breaking was both satisfying and infuriating. Get the hell out of my house! I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. Kyle tried to shield himself, but I wasn't done. I hit him again, this time knocking him to the floor. Blood dripped from his nose as he scrambled to his feet, mumbling, "I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean for this to happen." "You didn't mean for this to happen?" I yelled. "You're in my bed with my fiancé. Get the hell out of my house." Kyle, being the coward he is, bolted, clutching his face as he ran out the door. That left Ava sitting on the bed sobbing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like," I said, glaring into her soul. She tried to plead, saying it was a mistake that she wanted to explain. I was completely disgusted. "You've got 5 minutes to pack your things and get out," I said. "And if you're not gone by then, I'll throw you out myself." She cried harder, begging me to listen, but I didn't care. I watched as she grabbed a suitcase and shoved whatever she could into it. When her time was up, I opened the door and stood there waiting. She froze at the door, looking at me while sobbing and begging me to listen to her and give her a chance, but I didn't have chances to give. She used them all. I grabbed her hand, slipped the engagement ring off her finger, and pushed her toward the door. She tried to hold on, begging me to change my mind, but I was done. I yanked the door open and shoved her outside. She stumbled onto the porch, still sobbing and screaming for another chance. I didn't even bother looking back as I slammed the door in her face. That night, I sat alone, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. My plan of getting married vanished. My brother was a traitor. My world had been flipped upside down. I barely slept that night. My brain wouldn't shut up, running through every interaction, every red flag I missed. By morning, I was still furious, but the shock started wearing off and reality began to sink in. I wasn't just dealing with a breakup. This was betrayal on a whole other level, and it wasn't just Ava. It was my brother Kyle, the guy who should have had my back. I decided I needed to let my parents know what happened. Kyle's always been their golden boy, but I figured they'd at least understand how messed up this was. So I called them. My dad answered, and I just laid it all out. "Kyle's been sleeping with Ava, and I caught them last night." There was this long pause, like he didn't know how to respond. Then he said, "Are you sure?" That pissed me off. Sure did he think I made this up? I told him I didn't need proof, because I saw it with my own eyes. He sighed and said he talked to Kyle, but he didn't sound surprised, which threw me off. Then my mom got on the phone. I didn't even get a chance to explain before she started with her usual Kyle defending nonsense. "Oh, honey, I'm sure it's not as bad as it seems. Maybe it was a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? Yeah, because accidentally ending up in bed with my fiancé happens all the time. I snapped and told her to stop making excuses for him. I wasn't calling for her to play mediator. I wanted her to hear what her precious son had done. But then she said, "Kyle's been really struggling lately. He didn't mean to hurt you." Struggling? What does that even mean, struggling to keep his pants on? I couldn't believe it. She was already bending over backward to justify what he'd done. Like I was the one being unreasonable. I ended the call before I said something I'd regret. My dad texted me later saying he'd try to talk to Kyle, but I wasn't holding my breath. A couple of weeks passed, and I didn't hear a word from Kyle. Honestly, I was glad. I didn't trust myself not to knock him out if he tried to explain. Instead, I threw myself into work. I figured keeping busy would help me block out the noise in my head. After a few months from that doomed night, my phone rang. It was Kyle. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear what kind of excuse he could possibly have. His voice was shaky, like he was nervous. "Look, man, I screwed up. I don't know how it happened, but I didn't mean for it to go this far." I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. Didn't mean for it to go this far. So what, sleeping with my fiancé was some kind of accident? He started stammering, saying it was complicated, that Ava was unhappy, and they connected. Connected? I hung up before he could keep going. He texted me the next day saying he and Ava wanted to meet. He claimed they had something important to tell me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I told them to meet me at a coffee shop. I wasn't about to let them step foot in my house again. When I got there, they were already sitting at a table. Ava looked miserable, and Kyle just looked uncomfortable. I didn't sit down. I stood there with my arms crossed, and said, "What do you want?" Ava looked at Kyle like she was waiting for him to speak first. He cleared his throat and said, "We're together now, and Ava's pregnant." I swear it felt like the air got sucked out of the room. I just stared at them, waiting for one of them to say, "Just kidding." But they didn't. Kyle kept talking, saying how they wanted to make it work and how they needed my blessing. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't even a funny laugh. It was that kind of laugh you let out when you're so disgusted you don't know what else to do. "You want my blessing? Are you kidding me?" Ava tried to jump in, saying how sorry she was and how they didn't plan for this to happen. I cut her off. "You didn't plan for this, so what? One thing just led to another, save it." I walked out. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I just left because staying any longer would have made things worse. That night my mom called me again. I ignored it. Then she texted, "You need to let this go. It's time to forgive your brother and move forward. Forgive him for what, torching my life." I texted back, "Lose my number." She didn't take it well. The next morning she showed up at my house. She was waiting in her car when I left for work. I told her to go home, but she started crying and saying how much this was tearing the family apart. I didn't budge. Maybe you should have thought about that before siding with Kyle, I said. She tried to argue that she wasn't taking sides, but her actions said otherwise. She even tried to spin Ava's pregnancy as a blessing in disguise. I told her if she wanted a relationship with me, she needed to stop enabling Kyle and Ava. She didn't give me a straight answer, so I walked away. At that point, the only way to move forward for me was to put as much distance as I could between myself and the circus that was my family. So I made the decision to leave. I didn't just mean leaving them emotionally. I packed my life up and physically left the city. It wasn't an impulsive move. I spent weeks planning it. I started looking for job opportunities in different cities, ones that would allow me to start fresh. When I finally landed a solid offer, I took it without hesitation. I didn't tell anyone except my dad, and even then it was more of a heads up than a conversation.
I'm leaving, I said.
Don't tell anyone where I'm going. I told him this clearly and simply. He tried to talk me out of it, saying I didn't need to cut everyone off completely, but I wasn't in the mood for his half-hearted advice. My mom had already shown where her loyalty lay. He wasn't worth a single word for me. The move was harder than I thought it would be. Packing up your life and leaving behind the place you've lived for years, it's not easy. But I kept telling myself it was the only way. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood in a new city and settled in. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom with a tiny kitchen and a view of the parking lot, but it was mine. No reminders of the past. No shared spaces tainted by betrayal. Starting over felt weird at first. I was so used to being surrounded by people I knew, people who knew me. In the new city, I was just a face in the crowd, which was both liberating and lonely. I focused on my new job to keep myself distracted. My coworkers were nice enough, but I wasn't exactly in the mood to make friends. One thing I didn't expect was how quiet it would be. No calls. No texts. No awkward run-ins at family gatherings. At least I didn't have to deal with Kyle's antics, my mom's guilt trips, or Ava's fake apologies. I did get the occasional text from my dad, usually short updates like "hope you're doing well" or "miss you." He never pushed too hard, which I appreciated. But my mom, radio silence. Not a single call or message. I guess she figured I was the one who needed to come crawling back. By the time I hit the 1-year mark in the new city, I felt like a completely different person. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I'd gotten a promotion at work, made some solid friends, and even started saving for a better apartment. But here's the thing about moving on. Just when you think you've left it all behind, the past has a way of sneaking back in. One day, out of nowhere, I got a text from my dad. It wasn't his usual "hope you're doing well" message. This one was different. It said, "Your mom's asking for your number. She wants to talk." I stared at the screen for a long time. All I could think about was, what could she possibly have to say after all this time? I texted back, "Tell her I'm not interested." My dad didn't push, and neither did she, but that text shook me more than I wanted to admit. I thought I was done with all of it, but clearly they weren't. Then came an unexpected visit. It was a regular Tuesday evening, nothing special. I had just gotten back from work when I heard a knock at the door. At first I thought it might be a delivery mix-up or a neighbor needing something. I wasn't expecting visitors. I didn't exactly keep an open-door policy in my new life. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing there looking like life had dragged her through a blender was Ava, and next to her holding her hand was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 2 or 3, but even at a glance I knew whose kid she was. The resemblance to Kyle was glaring. Same eyes, same smirk, same everything. I didn't say anything at first, and neither did Ava. She just stood there looking worn out. Her clothes were shabby, and she looked thinner, almost sickly. It was like seeing a ghost of the person I used to know. The little girl, though, was staring up at me, probably wondering why this stranger looked so surprised. Finally, I broke the silence. "What are you doing here?" My tone wasn't exactly welcoming, but come on, what was I supposed to feel seeing her on my doorstep after all these years? Ava's eyes welled up with tears, and her voice was shaky. "I didn't know where else to go. Can I come in?" Every instinct I had was screaming no. But I couldn't just slam the door in her face, not with a kid standing there. So, against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let them in. I led them to the couch and sat down in the chair across from them, keeping as much distance as the room would allow. Ava was fidgeting, and the little girl was sitting quietly beside her, clutching a stuffed animal. I offered them water more out of politeness than actual care, but Ava shook her head. So I asked, leaning back, "What do you want?" She pulled out an envelope from her bag and handed it to me. I hesitated before taking it, but once I saw the handwriting on the front, I knew exactly what it was. My mom's handwriting. I opened it and started reading. It was, as expected, a guilt trip in letter form. My mom wrote about how Ava and the child, her grandchild, were struggling because Kyle had abandoned them. She said it was my responsibility to step up and help since I was the only stable one left in the family. She went on about how family takes care of each other even when things go wrong. By the time I finished, I was furious. I tossed the letter onto the coffee table and looked at Ava. "And what, you thought this was a good idea, just show up and let my mom guilt me into fixing this mess?" Ava's tears started flowing as usual.
"I didn't know what else to do," she said.
Kyle's gone. He left us 3 months ago. I tried to make it work, but I can't. Your mom's been helping me, but now she says she can't do it anymore. She said you'd. Her voice cracked, and she didn't finish the sentence. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Let me get this straight. Kyle bails, my mom decides she's done helping, and somehow I'm supposed to swoop in and save the day. Why would you even think that's an option? She wiped her face, with her sleeve looking completely defeated. Because I have no one else. I don't have a job. I don't have savings. Everything I had went into trying to make it work with Kyle, and now he's gone. I'm desperate. I looked at the little girl. She was just sitting there quietly, her big eyes darting between Ava and me. She had no idea what was going on, and honestly that made it harder. The kid didn't ask for any of this. I took a deep breath. I feel bad for her, I said, nodding toward the girl. She doesn't deserve this. But let me be clear. I'm not the guy to fix your problems. You made your bed with Kyle. You knew exactly who he was when you got with him, and now you're here expecting me to clean up his mess.
No.
Not happening. Ava started sobbing, full-on ugly crying. I know I messed up, but I didn't think he'd leave us like this. I thought he'd at least stick around for her. I didn't have it in me to argue anymore. I stood up and grabbed my wallet from the kitchen counter. I pulled out a couple of $100 and handed it to her. Here. This is all I'm giving you. Use it for gas, food, whatever, but I can't help you beyond this. You need to figure this out on your own. She took the money, with shaking hands, still crying. Thank you, she whispered. After a few awkward moments, she picked up her bag and held the little girl's hand. I'm sorry, she said, barely audible. I didn't respond. I just opened the door and waited for them to leave. As they walked out, the little girl turned around and gave me a tiny wave. I didn't know what to do, so I just nodded. When the door closed, I leaned against it and let out a long breath. My head was spinning. Seeing Ava again, seeing that kid reading that letter. It was like all the progress I'd made in the past 3 years to move on from this chaos got dragged back to square one. I sat down on the couch and stared at the envelope on the table. My mom had some nerve. After everything that happened, she still thought she could guilt me into playing savior for Kyle's mess. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Did she really believe I owed them anything? The next morning, I called my dad. I already knew he had given Ava my address, but I wanted to hear it straight from him. So I called him and got right to the point. Why the hell did you think it was okay to share my location with her after I told you not to? What exactly did you expect me to do for Ava and her kid? There was this awkward pause on his end. I'm sorry, son, I really am, he said, sounding regretful, but that didn't make it any better. He explained they had tried to help Ava as much as they could, but with Kyle gone, their hands were tied. Then he dropped the real reason. Your mom begged me to give her your address. She thought maybe if you saw her after all this time, you'd want to help her out. She has nowhere else to go. Hearing that only pissed me off more. I straight up asked him why he thought I'd ever help someone like her. I reminded him exactly what Ava did. She betrayed me with my own brother. Hurt me in ways I couldn't even explain, and now they expected me to just step in and play savior. He said he understood why I was upset, but then he pulled the family card. That was it for me. I told him we were done. I trusted him to be different from my mom, to actually have my back, but nope. Turns out they're all the same. Backstabbing, manipulative, and completely blind to how much they've hurt me. Did they really think I'd forget everything and just take in Kyle's kid like nothing ever happened? Unbelievable. That was it for me. My family had already betrayed me once. I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their mess. So after Ava and her kid walked out that door, I thought I'd finally gotten rid of all the leftover drama. I mean, I'd done what I could without compromising my boundaries. Gave her some cash and sent her on her way. I wasn't happy about it, but I figured it was over. Yeah, not so much. The next day, I got a text from my dad. He said my mom wanted to talk to me. No surprise there. It was probably about Ava's visit. I ignored it. A few hours later, another text came in. She just wants to explain her side.
Her side?
What side could there possibly be? She'd given my address to the woman who blew up my life, all so she could guilt me into cleaning up after Kyle. I told my dad to drop it. Tell her there's nothing to explain, I wrote back. If she keeps pushing, I'm done talking to both of you. I hit send and left it at that. But of course my mom wasn't one to take no for an answer. 2 days later, she showed up at my apartment. I got home from work tired as hell, and there she was sitting in her car outside my building. The second I stepped out of my car, she got out and started walking toward me.
Can we talk?
She asked like she hadn't completely bulldozed the boundaries I'd set. I sighed. Mom, I'm not doing this.
Go home.
She ignored me and started in on her speech. I know you're upset, but I had to do something. Ava and her daughter are family. They need help, and you're the only one who can give it to them. Family? I snapped. You're still calling her family after what she did. And Kyle, he's the reason they're in this mess, not me. Go find him if you want to play savior. She shook her head like I was the one being unreasonable. Kyle's not around, and you know that. He's not reliable, but you are. That little girl doesn't deserve to suffer because of her father's mistakes. I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around what she was saying. You've got some nerve, I said finally. After everything Kyle did to me, you really think I owe him or Ava anything? I don't care how you twist it. This isn't my responsibility. Do you think I want to ask you for help? She said. I don't, but Jessie is your niece. She's innocent in all this. I thought you'd understand. I couldn't believe it. You're unbelievable. I said. You didn't think about me when Kyle was screwing over my life. You didn't think about me when you sided with him after the wedding got called off, and now because he bailed you think I should swoop in and fix it?
No.
Not happening. She tried again, this time with tears. I just want what's best for Jessie. She's your blood. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. And whose fault is it that Jessie's in this situation? It's Kyle's. You want to help her, go find him. Tell him to step up and be a father, but don't come to me. I'm not your backup plan. At that point, my neighbors were starting to glance over, probably wondering why this middle-aged woman was crying in the parking lot while her son was visibly pissed. I didn't want to make a scene, so I turned to leave. That's when my mom grabbed my arm. Please, she begged. Don't do this. I yanked my arm away and looked her dead in the eye. I'm not doing this. If you can't respect that, don't call me again. I went inside and locked the door. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Calls, texts, voicemails. I didn't even look at them. I put my phone on silent and turned on the TV, but even then I couldn't focus. The next morning I called my dad. I'm done. Every time I tell you guys to leave me alone, you keep pressing my buttons, I said the second he picked up. She showed up at my place after I told her not to, and you let her think that was okay. He sighed. I didn't know she was going to do that. Yeah, well, now you do. Tell her to stay away. Both of you. I'm serious. Son, he started, but I cut him off.
No.
I'm not doing this anymore. I told you where I stand, and if any of you show up at my place again, I'll call the police. He tried to argue, saying my mom meant well and that she was just trying to do the right thing. I hung up before he could finish. Over the next few days, I blocked my dad's number too. I was done with the constant guilt trips and justifications. It wasn't easy though. Cutting off your own parents isn't something you do lightly, but what choice did I have? They'd made it clear where their priorities were, and it wasn't with me. That's where things stand for now. Currently, I'm planning to find out what Kyle's been up to and why he thinks he can just walk away from all this mess. I'm planning to track him down. If you're interested, I'll post an update. Final update, alright, so here's the update some of you are waiting for. After a month from posting here, I was able to track down Kyle with the help of one of my buddies. Turns out he'd resurfaced, living a couple of towns over with some new woman. The same guy who swore he was in love with Ava, who got her pregnant and married her, was now shacking up with someone else, pretending he didn't have a wife or kid. After a lot of back and forth, I decided to send Ava his address. It wasn't for her sake. It was for her kid. At least she'd have a shot at making him step up. That was the last loose end I tied up. I didn't care what happened after that. Whether Ava confronted Kyle or not. Whether my mom tried to intervene again. None of it mattered. I was done. Completely done. However, something about knowing exactly where Kyle was gnawed at me. I wasn't satisfied with just passing the info along. I needed to see it for myself. Call it curiosity, call it closure, but I needed to face him one last time. Not for some grand confrontation or to get answers. I already knew the type of person he was. No, this was for me to see the man who had shattered my life and walked away like it was nothing. So one weekend I drove to the address I'd been given. It was a dingy little apartment complex on the edge of a not-so-great part of town. The kind of place where you could tell people were just scraping by. Fitting, I thought. Kyle had always lived like nothing could touch him, but here he was holed up in some dump, probably pretending life was fine. I parked a little way down the street and just watched the building for a while. It wasn't long before I spotted him. He came out with a woman who looked barely out of her 20s. She was all over him, laughing and clinging to his arm like he was the best thing since sliced bread. Kyle, as usual, looked smug, like he was on top of the world. It hit me then how little he had changed. Same swagger, same fake charm, same guy who thought he could take whatever he wanted without consequence. The only difference now was that he wasn't my problem anymore. I didn't approach him right away. Instead, I waited until he was alone. Later that afternoon, he came out again, this time by himself, probably heading to the store or something. So I stepped out of my car and called his name. He froze, clearly not expecting to see me. "Oh hey," he said, trying to play it cool. "What are you doing here?" I stared him down. "I found out where you've been hiding. Figured it was time we had a chat." Kyle shifted uncomfortably, his confidence fading. "Look, if this is about Ava and Jessie, I already told Mom." I cut him off.
This isn't about them.
This is about you. Do you even realize the mess you've left behind, or are you too busy playing house with your latest fling to care? He looked away, shoving his hands in his pockets. "I didn't mean for things to get this bad," he mumbled. "I just needed a break. From what being a dad, being a decent human being. You're pathetic, Kyle." He tried to defend himself, spouting some nonsense about how he and Ava were never right for each other, how things got too complicated, blah blah blah. I didn't care. I'd heard enough excuses to last a lifetime. You don't get to walk away like this, I said, stepping closer. You have a kid, Kyle. A kid who didn't ask for any of this, and instead of stepping up, you ran. You left her and Ava to fend for themselves.
Do you even feel bad about that?
Kyle didn't answer. He just stood there staring at the ground like the coward he had always been. I don't care what your excuses are, I continued. You're going to fix this. You're going to step up, take responsibility, and figure out how to support your kid, because if you don't, I'll make damn sure you regret it. I didn't give him a chance to respond. I turned and walked back to my car, leaving him standing there, probably wondering if I'd really follow through. But I wasn't about to let him keep running without consequences. On the drive back home, I felt lighter. I finally wasn't carrying the weight of Kyle's betrayal. I'd faced him, told him exactly what I thought, and left him to deal with his own mess. In the end, all this wasn't about winning or getting revenge for me. It was about reclaiming control, letting go of the pain, setting boundaries, and refusing to let their chaos pull me back in. I've got my own life now. One where I'm finally free of their nonsense, and for the first time in a long time, I feel at peace.